Hey everyone, and welcome to the Rumcast podcast. My name is John Gulla. Here to talk rum with me, as always, is Will Hookinga, and together we host the podcast that talks all things rum related with the people who love and shape it. And speaking of shaping things, Will, today we're going to be taking on a task of shaping a beginner rum bar in maybe a different way than we've ever talked about or done in the past.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for that. But I know before we get to the main event for this episode, Will, I think the people deserve a little bit of an update on where we're at with the Rumcast Reserve bottles.
Well, first of all, if you're watching, you may see it was bottle arrival day for me. So
Yeah.
I got my bottles here. Samantha, my wife, got home from work, and I showed them to her immediately. And the first thing she said was, "They're so cute," which actually we had just received an email from one of our patrons who there was a line that was like, "I don't know how to say this, but the bottles are very cute." So I think this is a thing. The bottles are just adorable. So
Yeah.
I don't, maybe, they can become like Labubus or something. We can get a little mania going where people just have to have them because they're so cute.
We need a golden stopper or something version or so. I don't know. Yeah. How do we take advantage of this? No,
I don't
what was
know.
cool. Yeah, is that I saw in the email, and also somebody else had mentioned that the bottom, that kind of like shape on the bottom, that geometric design, that was harder to see online, but that in person it looks really cool, and I happen to agree. So
yeah, it is nice. So it's great to finally hold these in my hand. I also we just heard from our partners, John and Lori Shu, are helping us with a lot of the logistics of this release, that the pallet full of Rumcast Reserve bottles just arrived at our online retailer the day we're recording this, which is Wednesday, November 5th. So that means if you've already pre-ordered bottles from that online retailer, they should start shipping in the next few days. By the time this episode releases, hopefully some of those orders have already started going out. And we should just give a global update that we're approaching like right around 70% of all bottles between the two releases sold already, which is pretty amazing. Like the rum family has really shown up for the release, which has been great to see. Yeah, so if you're considering putting an order in, just like we're not trying to create like a rush for this or anything.
These are not Nintendo Wiis or anything.
Yeah, exactly. But I also, if anyone like wants one, I don't want people to miss out on it. So I'm just trying to put it out there that it's we're progressing towards all bottles being sold.
Yeah. I mean, I imagine that, there will be continued sales, but once people get the bottles in their hands, they start to actually be able to pour the liquid, to experience that. And if they're in agreement with us, which I'm hoping some people are, then, you start to see a little bit more of that momentum gather. But by the time that happens, I wonder where we're at with the amount of bottles left. So to your point, I guess, like you said, if you are feeling like, hey, I want to ensure that I'm going to get one of these, probably the next couple of weeks is going to ensure that you're going to get one, and after that we can't say for certain.
Yeah, and we should note that in that figure I gave of nearly 70% being sold, we are including retail, like brick and mortar retailers that have bought cases of the bottles. Again, that is like a smaller amount of what's available. It is going to a select few stores in 4 different states, I believe. So some of them are on store shelves, but yeah.
Yeah. So between that, the online sales have been great to those 41 states that we ship to. So that's been awesome to see. And I, like we've said before, I just can't wait to finally see it in people's hands. And hopefully they share with us and with others their thoughts on it.
And I understand that you've been doing a little evangelizing of your own throughout the state of Florida in recent days. Is that right?
I've been hard at work, Will.
Yeah.
I've been busy trying to get this thing out there in my neck of the woods. Yes. And at some point, we got to see something from you, too, up there in Nashville.
We don't have distribution in Tennessee, so we have some distribution in Florida. It makes sense for you to do these events.
Sure, I guess you could say that. But yeah, Florida's a big state. So been trying to get around. So I was in downtown Orlando. I think, we put on social media that this event at the Aku Aku Tiki Bar in downtown Orlando was yesterday night, and we had some Rumcast patrons come out. We had a few other rum lovers from Florida Rum Society. Mike Streeter joined us from Down Island. That was cool.
Nice.
And of course, Jay Cocarulo from Florida Rum Society as well. And so it was, a little bit of a smaller crowd on a Tuesday, maybe, but it was perfect because it allowed us to really get these rums into people's glasses, and for them to take their time with it and go through tasting these, getting some of the notes that they got from it. I like to, when I talk about these, not give a bunch of the notes first and let people experience them. So it was really cool to finally get, I know this is the second time, it's 2-0, Will, because now I've had 2 chances in front of people to pour the rums for them. So got to do that a little bit. It was a nice time. And then afterwards, went to Otto's High Dive for a little bit and hung out there. Let me tell you, as far as rum bars go, man, Otto's High Dive is bringing the heat.
Yeah,
these
that's
drinks
where it's
were
at.
phenomenal, and that place is awesome. Yeah, so just an update for those of you who may not have been able to make it, or if you find yourself in downtown Orlando anytime soon, Rumcast Reserve bottles are going to be at the Aku Aku Tiki Bar and Otto's High Dive. So, ask the bartenders there if there's any left and you want to try them.
Skip Disney World, go straight to Otto's High Dive is what I'm hearing.
Exactly. Right. You'll have more fun, I think. I did want to mention one other thing, Will, that was pretty cool about the event at Aku Aku when we had our group together talking about it. And that is, once everybody had a chance to try these rums, they looked at the labels in the sunlight, picked the felt versus linen, did all that stuff. I kind of said, okay, now I've had a little bit more time with these. And I've tried something that I wanted to share with them, and now I want to share it with everybody out there because hopefully their bottles are arriving soon, and I want them to try this and report back. And that is, I blended these together.
All right. I've been waiting to do that myself until my
Yes.
bottles arrive, so I'm interested to hear the approach that you took and the ratios and everything, because I'm definitely trying it.
Yes. So what I did really was just think about ABVs, right? So since the Guyana is at 50, roughly 51, just a little under, and the Mauritius is a little higher at 63, I went 60-40 in favor of the Guyana. So 60% Guyana, 40% Mauritius, and blended those together. And honestly, I don't know. It's just luck, like it's just luck, but it's really good.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, God damn it, that's very good. So I really loved it. I told them all to do it, and they did it. And I think the majority of everybody was really positive and like, yeah, that is actually really cool that works. Now, here's the interesting piece. One of the tables that had 4 people sitting at it, they did it backwards by accident. They did Mauritius 60% and Guyana 40%. And I tasted that, and honestly,
I could see it working too.
I might like it better. I can't now. I have to go back on my own and like take my time and really try to see if we can dial it in a little bit. It was just fun. It was just so fun to try them in that way. And just another thing for, I guess, people that have both of these. Try it out. Let me know if I'm crazy or if it really does just work.
So what I'm hearing is we fucked up the release by not blending these and releasing it as a blend.
I mean, honestly, I think we could have, and it would have been pretty fucking amazing. So, yeah.
All right, yeah, I'm going to do my own experimentation with ratios and stuff, and I'll report back. I'm excited about doing that. I'll have to do it this weekend.
Yeah, I was like, you get to that point in the night where you're drinking, and sometimes you're just like, you know what, fuck it, and just, like, that's kind of what happened, and it was great.
All right, well, with that in mind, I guess we should take a quick little break and then get into the meat of this episode, the main event. All right, we're back and we're ready to jump into this. John, the genesis for this episode was interesting because several years ago, I think this was 2021, it was because I was listening back to the episode and there were like multiple pandemic references to it. Like, I think you said at some point, we're starting to have people back over at the house, and I just like started getting like,
oh no.
Yeah, I was like, oh my God. I had forgotten about this somehow. Yeah, exactly. Memories of wiping down groceries were flashing through my head.
Yeah.
But anyway, that episode was titled Rum 201. And the premise of it, we had a great email question that was basically, I've tried some of the beginner stuff and I'm ready to move on to the next phase of my rum journey. What are the best bottles for that? And we kind of realized we thought that we had done a Rum 101 episode at some point, but we actually never did. So we've never really talked about, if you're just getting started, what are the best bottles for that? And I know we've like, that's probably come up on different episodes throughout the years, but I don't think we've talked about it lately. And I do think the rums that I would recommend today in November of 2025 have evolved a lot since we started the podcast, or even since a couple of years ago, to be honest. So we kind of came up with a new convention for doing this, or I should say you did. You had a brilliant idea. So do you want to talk people through that and share it with the world?
I was kind of trying to think about how could we do this in an interesting way, right? Rather than just say, oh, well, we talk about some bottles. And this kind of thought came into mind. I remembered the old TV show, Name That Tune.
Mm-hmm.
And part of me was like, I can make this bar in this amount of bottles, right? And then wouldn't it be interesting if we can then kind of do a back and forth to see if we can underbid each other for what we feel like is a complete beginner's bar and how many bottles you really need to make that happen and not have a big gap, right? So here's a different way of explaining it. I think that
Okay.
might hit home. Imagine you've heard about some sort of a grant, right?
All
And
right.
this grant is for putting together a rum beginner's bar, right? And the winner of the grant is going to be the person that can do it with the least amount of bottles, right? Not
Okay.
necessarily tied to price, because in reality that probably would be, but like, that's where I kind of see this going. Is we're competing in a way of saying like, how many bottles does it really take, and we have to then pitch this at what whoever wins with the lowest bid, right? We're going to call each other out. One of us is going to have to, and then whoever
Okay.
wins with that bid has to explain.
Okay, I think I'm following, and the way that I was thinking about this, because I was trying to think of like who is the beginner that we're designing this bar for, and what do we mean by saying like a complete rum bar?
Yeah.
And I'm interested in how you answered that question for yourself, because we didn't talk about this. We made our lists independently, and now we're going to go through them. But the way that I tried to think about it was in terms of a complete rum bar. What is the fewest amount of bottles in order to give someone who's new to rum as great a sense of the category as possible? So trying
Yes.
to introduce someone to the breadth and depth of the category in as few bottles as we can, basically.
Yeah.
And I found that immensely hard. I feel like there were 12 different versions of this bar in my head, each with different numbers of bottles, because it was really hard to say, okay, when is it acceptable to stop and say this is representative enough of the entire rum world for a beginner? And I really struggle with
Yes.
that, and I honestly I don't know if I arrived at the right answer, but we're gonna find out how we feel about it.
So, number one, I think you did a really good job of capturing where my thoughts were, because that is the rub. It's where do you stop
Yeah.
and feel like, okay, I feel good about this for a beginner. And
Yeah.
that is a super tricky thing for rum enthusiasts like us, I think, or really for anybody. Because I think, yeah, you could give an easy, plain answer, but I'm putting more thought into it, right? And I think you are as well, in terms of like, how do you even approach it, and what makes the most sense to give somebody that, knowing that rum is so versatile and broad and has so many origins and so many uses and has
Yeah.
all of that's where it gets really tough to say, okay, where do you feel good about it? So yeah, it sounds like you and I are on the same page with that, so that's good. And then I'm going to be interested to see who ends up being the one to have to explain themselves in terms of the number.
I mean, I feel like we're both gonna end up having to explain ourselves in some capacity.
True. Yes. But the onus is on the person who has the least amount of
fewest?
bottles. Yes, the fewest.
Okay. God, I'm suddenly hoping that I didn't choose the fewest, although I feel like I might have. So, I actually, that's a good question. Do you think that you chose the fewest, or do you think I did?
Well, my strategy was to start in a place that I feel really good about, and then like a name that tune type of thing. If you go lower than me, then I might be able to go lower than you.
I've never seen Name That Tune.
What?
So I don't-
Oh my God! Really?
when did that air?
Oh, it's really freaking old. So I guess I'm really old. I don't even know when it stopped airing. It might have stopped airing in like the 80s for all I know.
I mean, I've heard people say Name That Tune, but
yeah,
like I'm
the whole
pretty sure it
premise.
wasn't on television after I was born.
Yes, it was.
Was it?
You're not that much younger than me.
Name That Tune. It ran from 1974 to 1981, and then it returned for one more season in 1984 to 1985.
Shit.
All of which is, I was born in 1988, so I missed that. Although it seems that it returned again in 2021 and is continuing to run. So yeah, I've missed it over the last 4 or 5 years, apparently. But I have an excuse for the original run of the show.
All right. I know reruns have been going for a lot longer than that.
One more thing I want to establish is, who is your beginner that you're building this bar for? Tell me about your beginner.
Ooh, that's a good one too, because I was thinking about it from somebody who is already like interested in rum. This is not a beginner of like somebody like, what is rum, right? I'm not
Right.
going from that standpoint. I'm going from somebody who has been exposed to rum a little and maybe is into different spirit categories, whiskey,
Okay.
bourbon, etc. And
So this person drinks other spirits.
or lightly even, let's
Yeah.
say. It's
Okay.
somebody who's now saying, I've had rum and Coke before, but I didn't realize that there's this whole world out there. How do I get to know this whole world? And that's kind of where my perspective on it was. It's not somebody that is like, turning 21 today
Yeah.
and like, show me rum.
Yeah. I think similarly, what I did, I imagined friends that I've had in recent years come up to me and want rum recommendations who are new to the category. And when that happens, it's almost universally people who already enjoy at least one other spirit. Most of the time whiskey,
Yeah.
for the people that I know. And so I didn't specifically do this like with whiskey drinkers in mind, but I did do it with people who at least enjoy, at least occasionally, consuming neat spirits and that sort of thing. So the type of person who might be interested enough to want to listen to this podcast, for example. I don't think we get a lot of people coming to the podcast who are like, I've never, really been a spirits drinker before. So there's some amount of foundational knowledge and appreciation for consuming spirits.
Right. And even willing to maybe sip some spirits versus, this is not a person who's just looking to mix, although that is a big part of rum in itself.
Yeah. That's the other interesting wrinkle in building this bar. So, all right, how do we want to get into this now that we've kind of set it up?
I mean, we could do some sort of randomizer, or I could just start and I can tell you what my bottle count is. My bottle count.
We don't want to get into bottle counts. That's a little personal, but yeah. So do we want to do totals and then just go one by one?
What I want to do, how I see this working is, I'm going to say a total, and you're going to tell me if yours is, you can name it in less.
Okay.
Okay? And then I'm going to go if I can name it in less than that. And then we take turns until one of us says, nope, I cannot do it in less bottles than that. Then you explain your bar. And then I'm sure, like you said, we'll get back to the other persons and where their take was with it. I think that's how we have to do this.
All right.
I'm willing to
way.
go first.
Lead the way.
All right. So, Will, I believe that I can make this fictional rum beginner's bar in just 10 bottles.
Okay.
I can do it in 10.
I think I can do it in 6.
Holy crap! Well, okay, you're done. Go with 6. I think you're going to be missing a ton with 6, but let's see it.
I mean, sure, yeah, of course I'm going to be missing a ton, but you have to draw the line somewhere in doing this. So.
Your line is, I can already tell at 6, your line is going to be way under where mine is.
Here's my defense. If you have 10 bottles, it's no longer a beginner's bar.
Yes, it is. It can be. Sure, it can.
When you have bought that many bottles, you are no longer a beginner in my view.
I disagree because I think rum can support a 10-bottle beginner bar.
So, yes, I mean, in the sense of there are so many rums out there, but I'm just saying, like, once you pass a certain threshold, you have crossed into, you're taking this a little bit more seriously, and I think that happens before 10 bottles. So, while I agree in the sense of, like, rum is so vast and diverse, obviously you're just scratching the surface at 10 bottles, right? I think it's unreasonable to say to have a complete beginner's bar, you have to buy 10 fucking bottles. That's too many.
You don't have to, but I'm saying where is the line where I think you've completed the idea of what rum is? You need 10. I could probably do it in 8.
Okay.
Probably do it in 8. I was prepared. If you said I can do it in 9, I was going to say I can do it in 8. But you went right to 6. So we're done there. You're going to start. But I could probably do it in 8 and still feel okay about it.
Okay.
But I started at 10 just because I think there's a case there for 10.
Sure.
So,
no, I mean, I would fully accept. I mean, the rum enthusiast in me wants to go well beyond 6. I was just trying to have a little bit of discipline to try to do this in as few bottles as possible, right? So,
You're just getting hung up on the word beginner. That's all.
well, no, I think in 6 bottles, I think that you can represent a pretty decent chunk of the rum world for someone who is just starting to get into. And then once you can graduate beyond this and be introduced to many other things, of course. So,
and I think you just nailed it. That's the question. You said a pretty big chunk.
Yeah.
The question for us as we're kind of working through this is going to be, how big is enough of a chunk?
Yeah.
And that's where it's going to rest. I still think I'm curious to see, because maybe you did it and thought about this in such a way that I will agree that your 6 bottles is representative enough. But I have questions.
So I will just give you my approach to this, which was I went back and forth on this, and I decided ultimately for a beginner's rum bar, I'm just going to focus on the Caribbean. Because I think the Caribbean is always where I'm going to start someone in rum with my recommendations.
Yep.
And I think there's so much within that region, which is a large region, to be fair, many different cultures, many different countries, many different styles of rum. You could spend years just drinking Caribbean rums.
You could.
And like have so many different amazing
And probably be
experiences.
pretty happy. Yeah.
And I think where I started to struggle was if I said I have to include regions beyond the Caribbean, because there's so many places in the world that make amazing rum, and rum is more than just the Caribbean. What I struggled with was it felt like opening Pandora's box, where once I selected one place, it was like, well, why can't I, how is country X supposed to be representative of all these non-Caribbean countries,
Right.
You can go from like Fiji to Australia to Thailand to Ghana to Mexico. It's like all these, the United States, like all these places.
It's true Carmen Sandiego game at that point.
Yeah, and so that's when I made the decision. Like, I think it's acceptable for a beginner's complete rum bar to focus on what to me is the foundational region of the category, and really explore the different varieties of rum within that. And even still, I'm still having to leave out a bunch of places. But to bring up enough different types of styles to encourage them to then branch out to all those other places throughout the Caribbean and also the broader rum world. So I did have a version that was 7 and included one non-Caribbean rum to try to be like, and here's everything else. But I was just like, this feels silly to just have this one rum trying to carry on its shoulders like all the other rums of the world. It didn't seem fair. I found it very difficult to elect a representative for that rum, and so that's why I ultimately decided to stick with the Caribbean.
Okay, well, so number one, you'll be happy to know that I actually chose a similar path.
Interesting. Okay.
And I agree with you in a lot of what you said. I won't say everything, because I think, number one, it might be a little bit of a United States perspective. I'm not really sure. Like, I can't speak for anybody else, but here in Miami, I'm so close to it all anyways. It's kind of where I think of when I think of rum to start with.
Yeah.
That's not to say that any of those other regions, you mentioned a bunch, and even Australia, and, Italy's making rum now, as we know, and other places that are so freaking good and we talk about all the time.
Yeah.
But remember, we're going back to, this is a beginner, and we're trying to give them a complete as we can, reasonably, sense of what rum is. And I will agree with you, it's kind of hard not to start in the Caribbean.
Yeah.
So from that standpoint, I agree. But it sounds like we're going to diverge somewhere along the line.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. We could, if you want to go back and forth, we could do that a little bit. Or if you have a category that matches mine, I could just say that.
I think we should go back and forth.
Okay.
I'll get us started with 3 rums that I started with.
Okay.
Because I feel like I don't have the best rationale for this, because it's not completely fair to the Caribbean as a region. But when I start thinking about the first rums that I am going to recommend to someone, there's always 3 Caribbean countries that come to mind for me. And those are Barbados, Jamaica, and Guyana. For some reason, for me, that is like the holy trinity of this is rum. As a a step one, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying like their rums are only for beginners, because obviously there are, very advanced rums from all of those nations that could, take some time to warm yourself up to.
Yeah.
So I started there, and then I tried to just say, what is the accessible rum from each of those countries that really gives people an idea of
The distinct style.
Right. Exactly.
Even though that in and of itself is going to be difficult for many places.
Yes. And I can't remember, I think maybe you mentioned this, but we're trying to do stuff that's like not super expensive and that is available, right?
Widely available.
Because these are
and
beginners. Yeah. When I'm trying to recommend something to a friend who asks me, I'm not like, we'll go find the single cask release that's
Right.
$150 and there's 170 bottles or whatever. I'm not going to send them down like on a wild goose chase for that. So
Yeah, I agree, and I'm glad you mentioned it, because my idea here was that we could do this with things that are just available on the shelf in the majority of places in the United States.
yeah.
I know that there's some differences in distribution, but that's the kind of idea. Yeah.
Okay. So with that in mind, with those countries in mind, the bottles that I came up with were, this was very hard, by the way. So like, I don't want to do a bunch of qualifying and waffling and stuff, but
Yeah.
I know the second I say some of these, it's just going to be like, how did you leave out, rum X or whatever? So for my Barbados rum, I'm choosing Dourly's 14.
Well,
I'll come back to
okay. Go ahead. Keep going.
for my Jamaican rum, I'm choosing Rum Fire.
What?
And for my Guyana rum, I'm choosing El Dorado 12.
Oh my goodness. Will, what part of beginner did we forget about already? In your first ones here, by going with Dourly's 14. Look, it's a great, phenomenal rum, even, I would say. And it isn't like it's the ECS series. I get that, right? But you're not going to start at like Dourly's XO. You're not
No.
going to start at maybe even just Dourly's 12. Why would you pay the extra money for the extra 2 years for somebody that might be lost on them to start with?
First of all, I think saying pay the extra money for the extra 2 years, I don't think that's what
is
you're paying the
reductionist.
extra money for. Yeah. You're not paying the money just because it has a 14 instead. I mean, you partially are for marketing reasons, but what you're getting in the rum goes a lot beyond just like, oh, it aged 2 years longer. I think of it from the standpoint, again, of when I've recommended rums to friends and what I would do going forward. And my feelings on this have actually changed in the last year or so in terms of the Dourly's line, in that, look, I'm not saying I would not recommend Dourly's XO or Dourly's 12, because I think they're both really good rums. And some of this just depends on what price point the person is comfortable with starting.
Yeah.
Like, if it's someone who doesn't regularly spend, $50+ on a bottle, then yeah, I probably would go with 12. But I still, to me, the 14 is such a step up from the rest of the line in a meaningful way that if I am wanting to like rum to make a good first impression on them, and I think that they're comfortable with that price point, then I will, without reservations, steer them to the 14 over the 12 and the XO, because I think it's that much better. It's a step up in ABV, but I think it's still in a beginner ABV zone. It's the upper end of it for sure. It's at 48% ABV, but I still think it's a super approachable rum. I don't think it is overly oaky relative to the 12, and to me, it's just it's a stunning rum. And the value of what you're getting for the price is just so good. It's become my go-to aged Barbados rum to recommend someone to do first. That's the one I'm going to steer people to.
Okay. So I don't disagree with anything you just said, first of all, just to be clear, okay?
I think you can find something to disagree with.
Advocating for the beginner here. No, I mean with Dourly's 14 as a bottle.
Yeah.
Advocating for the beginner here. I think we might lose touch a little bit as rum enthusiasts and not remember, hey, some people are just not ever used to drinking anything above 40%. And I think because of that, something like Dourly's XO or the Dourly's 12 at I think it's 43% is probably going to be your better place to start than the Dourly's 14, not to mention, like we said, the price, right? So let me stop there real quick. My first category was Barbados.
Okay.
So we are in sync here. But if it's not the Dourlies, and Dourlies, by the way, in the United States is only in Total Wine, right? It's a Total Wine exclusive.
There's like a few exceptions to that.
Okay, I didn't know that.
But like I think they say Total Wine exclusive, but like I've
Yeah.
found stores that sell Dourlies that are not
Okay.
Total Wine.
But what I would say is, if you're not looking at Dourlies, you can also look at RL Seals. You can also look at Elaine Arthur's, which we have endorsed as pretty damn good rums for cheap prices for beginners that I would think would make a great first entry into a Barbados category. Not to mention Mount Gay, right?
Yeah.
Now, Mount Gay, you're paying a little more, but yeah.
Yeah, and honestly, that's part of what precludes me from Mount Gay is I just think the value ratio relative
Right.
to what you can get with the Foursquare branded rums.
Yeah.
Or not Foursquare branded, but brands from Foursquare. I just think they have such an advantage there. The Allie Arthur's point, I do agree that like for the price, it's a really good rum. But if I am talking to someone who's new to rum, who I know appreciates spirits and is used to drinking spirits neat in other categories, that's not the first rum I'm going to recommend them.
Yeah.
Just because it's a great value. It's still like it punches above its weight, but at the end of the day, it's still like it's serviceable rather than being something that I think is really like, man, this is a great first impression of Barbados rum if I'm really trying to sell someone on the category.
Yeah, and going back to the point of who is our beginner, which is a bit amorphous anyways,
Yes.
right? I think that you're right. I would, if I knew the person that was actually asking for this, then I would say, okay, I will adjust my picks for this of what should be in your beginner bar based on that experience. But if we go with the more categorical, hey, you've got a grant and you need to appeal to a wider audience, then I think I'm still sticking to the RL Seals 10, or it maybe even a Mount Gay Black Barrel or Eclipse or something like that. I think
there's no way I would do Eclipse.
Yeah, I mean it's probably Black Barrel.
I mean to me Eclipse is
it's eclipsed by its other ones.
look I like Eclipse. It's retired in our fantasy rum draft, or it's snoozed at least. Like it's gotten picked a lot, and I think I've drafted it twice maybe, but it's for a neat drinking experience introducing someone to Barbados rum, it's never going to be my first pick.
Okay. All right. I think we've beat this dead horse a little bit. Let me talk about my number 2 here, and it syncs up again with you, which is
Wait,
Jamaica.
so yours is RL Seals 10?
I think I would
bottle?
go RL Seals 10 or if you can't find that for whatever reason, I think it is Mount Gay Black Barrel.
Okay.
The way I did this, by the way, was not to give me one single bottle. It was representative of the category, and I had a few options in each category.
Mm-hmm.
So I did it like you're saying. I did it by origin. So Barbados was number 1, and 2 was Jamaica. So we are in sync totally so far, right? And then for Jamaica, now let me talk about some of the bottles that came to mind. I don't think it's going to be a huge surprise. I think we'll start to diverge a little bit later in the list. But for me, this is an easy pick to say, hey, Appleton 8 or Appleton 12 is where you start with Jamaica, but it's not the only place you can start. Yeah. And I would also say you could look for Worthy Park Select, Worthy Park 109, both pretty damn good rums. I think probably the Worthy Park Select would be one that I would probably gravitate towards or push if it's in the area. If not, we know Appleton 8 and Appleton 12 are pretty much everywhere. So that's kind of where I'm going to go with Jamaica. It's a very small sample of what Jamaica can do. Yeah. And I understand that, but and I know your pick is already Rumfire. It's not Rumfire. It's the far more approachable Jamaican rums that maybe start to bring in a little hint of what that funk might be like. Which I've had some people that have never had a Jamaica rum before try some of those and be like, "Whoa, that's too funky."
Yeah.
Or like that it takes their brain a while to wrap around it to the point where they can start to enjoy it.
Yeah.
So I think I'm gonna let you talk about it. I think I might be understanding where you want to go with this, but Rumfire is that's a tough one for me. Okay, go.
So my thinking was I'm never gonna introduce someone to the breadth and depth of Jamaican rum with just one bottle, right? And I'm thinking about this in the context of this bar as a whole. And obviously, the first place my mind went was Appleton 8 or Appleton 12. And between those, I would have recommended the 8 if I had picked an Appleton rum. But
Okay.
then I started thinking about my bar. And I thought, I've got the Dooley's 14. I've got a Guyana rum, which I'll reveal shortly. But it's sort of in that wheelhouse of moderately aged, lower proof. And I was just like, Appleton 8 is kind of playing. Obviously, it's its own thing, and it does give you a window into the Jamaican style, right?
Yeah.
But it's still kind of playing in the same ballpark as these other two aged rums that are already part of my bar. And so I was trying to branch out because again, I'm trying to limit the number of bottles, right? So
Yeah.
what's a bottle that is going to do a completely different job within their bar and is also going to like really show some distinctive character of the origin? And I'm also pricing in, like, when I'm presenting this bar to this beginner, it's not like I'm going to be saying these rums are representative, like all Jamaican rums taste like this, right? I'm going to give them the context of
a given. Yes.
like overproof rum, unaged overproof rum is an iconic style within Jamaica. And I would say is like the style that Jamaica is probably most famous for throughout the world. Because of Ray and Nephew and its prevalence. However, I do think among the Jamaican overproof rums, Rumfire is the best in my view.
Yeah.
And, you know, I know it's a beginner, but there's something fun about rum where you just decide sometimes that you want to blow someone's hair back. And I think that everyone has that experience when they're getting into rum. And so I wanted to encapsulate that in my bar. And I would give this beginner some recommended cocktail usages and things, some context that they could enjoy this Rumfire in. I'm not just going to say, hey, pour yourself a glass and dive right in, right? I might tell them, hey, pop the cap on that and smell it.
Give it a whiff.
Yeah, exactly. I wanted that. I wanted this to stand out in the bar and really show them, holy shit, like this is something completely different, and I had no idea what was possible within this world of rum. I didn't want every bottle to be so radio friendly down the middle that they start to blend in a little bit together. So I wanted some sharp contrasts in my bar, and I do think there are contexts within which a beginner can enjoy Rumfire. I think it's a needle to thread, right? You have to tell them how to wield it, right? But I think it's possible, but also it's a little dangerous, and I like that.
I understand your logic. I think one thing that we didn't also clarify is like, hey, do we get to be there with this beginner and hand them these bottles and talk about them with them, taste through things with them, or is it like, here's the bottles, you go now with them and off on your own? Because I think in that context, I don't know what the number is here, but I'm going to guess 1/3 of people really like, whoa, that is amazing and different and cool. And 2/3 of people are like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Right. And may never go back to it, or you might turn them off altogether. And so I'm fearful in a way that I might scare somebody out of that category if that is the first ever Jamaica rum they've had.
That's fair. I think I'm imagining that people aren't experiencing this beginner's bar in a vacuum, and it's coming with some instruction. They're listening to this episode maybe, right? As they're deciding what to buy, and so we're giving them that extra context.
One can hope.
yeah. I'm imagining it like a conversation with a friend, basically. Yeah.
All right, that gives you a little bit more. And to make the other point that I think was fair for you is if you're only doing 6 bottles, I do get the idea of you don't want everything to be just right down the middle. Yeah. So I get that. Okay.
All
right.
I kind of mentioned my other one. So for Guyana, that was my trio that I'm leading off with. Yep. This one, I think this is the one of my first 3 that won't be objectionable. Maybe I already mentioned it. Eldorado 12 was this one. Obviously, there's only one distillery to go to represent this region.
Yep.
And you can go a few different directions. You can go the third-party brand that sources from Demerara Distillers Limited, or you can start with the distillery's brand, Eldorado. They have a couple of brands, but Eldorado is the one we're going to start with here. So, Eldorado 12, I just think it's it's representative of the overall profile the distillery is capable of. It gives you an opportunity to tell a little bit of a cool story about their unique approach, the heritage stills and everything. This blend does contain rum from the EHP wooden coffee still, so you can get some of that in there. And it's, we've done an El Dorado lineup tasting to see which ones we prefer the most.
Yep.
And while this is 40% ABV, which I do wish that was higher to bring a little bit more oomph and intensity of flavor, it still brings a nice level of complexity, and it is a very soft, easy introduction into the world of rum, while also still being distinctive among the rums. Like, I think if you drink this next to the Dourly's 14, for example, you're like, oh, I can really taste the difference in the flavors here. So,
Yep.
Yeah, I think it works well as a contrast there, a different style of aged rum, and a completely unique origin.
I'm on board with everything you said. My number 3 was also Guyana.
All right.
So we synced up with the first 3, actually. And Eldo 12 or Eldo 15. I like the 12 now more, even though I had started with the 15. So there's something to that, maybe. I don't know. But either one to me would be acceptable as a beginner bar entry here. And like you said, you could do a Hamilton 86. You could do a Pussers maybe if you didn't have those Eldorados around, or if, hey, there was a sale on one of them. And
Yeah.
I think you're going to get a similar type of experience now with those. This is a new Pussers, right? Because that's only Guyana sourced, whereas the older ones were blends. But yeah, I'm for all the reasons you just said. It's distinct. It brings something that is different than other spirit categories. Even like we sometimes hear from people that, oh, Barbados rum is so very similar to bourbon, right? Oh, that's if you have a bourbon drinker, you push them to Barbados,
Yeah.
and that's kind of where you go. And there's some merit to that, and it worked for me, honestly. But I think it's still its own thing. And I think now with Guyana, you take one further step out of that whiskey bourbon circle into something different, and so it has to be there in a beginner bar. I agree with you 100%. Okay,
Sure.
My number 4, we're going over to Puerto Rico.
All right.
I think we have talked now. We've got 3 kind of, British tradition. Again, we hate using those descriptives, but rums to start with. And Puerto Rico now is going to bring us something different. And I think although there's a lot of enthusiasts like us who don't spend as much time, I would say, with Puerto Rican rums anymore.
Sure.
And for some good reasons. Like, we know, hey, Bacardi is so huge in all of this, and it's almost unavoidable, and maybe even turns some people off into it. But there is also Don Q, there's Ron del Barrilito, and maybe a couple other things that people can find that I think is emblematic of Puerto Rico, and a column stilled, friendly, approachable rum that can be sipped neat or can be put into a drink and enjoyed in that way. So I think for those reasons, I would look at either the Don Q7 if you could find enough affordable for the Gran Añejo. It's a very nice product. It's still 40%, and I just like you said about the Eldo, I wish it was a little higher. Barrilito, I think, brings a little bit of something different in the flavor profile. And then this might be the first time I've ever recommended this, but hey, even the Bacardi 8, the Ocho series, it's not terrible. For a beginner bar, it kind of makes sense to me. So I wouldn't fault people for starting there and saying, you know what, I like this. What else is there?
Yeah.
And then go in that route. So that was my number 4 category, or number 4 bottle would be from that selection.
I completely see that perspective, and I definitely thought about trying to get a Puerto Rican rum in this bar. And ultimately, well, I'll say more about this in a future pick, but I think when I think about the aged rums, obviously they are distinctive from all the rums that we've already talked about, right? It's a lighter profile, more cask driven, I would say, even than the Barbados rums, which are also fairly cask driven in nature. And for me, when trying to think about, I know I'm not going to be able to get every island, every nation, right? And so I just felt there was a little too much. I hate using the term overlap because they're so different and they have their own things. But I felt like what I was the window into rum I was giving people with the Barbados rum was enough to capture that kind of cask-driven profile. And so I just didn't see room. Again, if I'm trying to narrow this down to as few bottles as possible, which
Yeah, I know I'm putting you in a box here, obviously, with the exercise. So
yeah,
I get that it's meant to make us a little uncomfortable as we talk about this.
I'll also just say, like, as much appreciation as I have for Puerto Rican rums, you know, we've talked a lot about, we both like Don Q rums a lot,
Yeah.
you know, some of them. I haven't had a high hit rate with introducing people on those rums. People tend to gravitate towards others that I introduce to them instead.
Yeah.
So that's kind of informing my my selection here.
But I think there's some value even as a baseline of expectation, right? Like if you talk to most people, even that aren't into rum at all or into spirits, like they know.
When you said rum at all, it sounded like you were saying rum et al.
Definitely those
Robin's
people.
rums. Yeah.
Yes, but no, I mean in any way. That's our new line, but rum in any way. No, so it feels almost conspicuous to not be present in a weird
That's
way.
totally fair.
Yeah, and so like if people were saying, "Oh, this is a beginner bar," okay, I understand why those are there, and I understand that this, even though I might be a little bit more used to it, I can try that against these other things and start to suss out some of the differences in things as they are present for me.
Yep.
So yeah, all right. I mean, I understand where you're going. I still think it's kind of a gap. I'll be honest, but I get it. Okay, number 5.
Right. Oh, it's me now?
Yeah.
Okay. I have to have. I struggled with this. The rum agricole question.
Yeah, like how do you have to have the rum agricole but not have a Puerto Rican rum? Like that's a tough one for me to see.
Well, I have the rum agricole, so again, I'm trying to. I think the way I approach this is I'm trying to cover bases in terms of jobs that these rums do within a bar, right? Mm-hmm. And again, with the Barbados rum and between the Barbados and the Guyana rum, I feel like I have a lot of bases covered in terms of aged character, right? Okay. There's nothing else that can. There's no substitute for cane juice rum, essentially. And if I'm going to have a cane juice rum representative, for me, it has to be a Martinique rum agricole because I think that's almost the foundational cane juice rum style in the Caribbean.
Yeah.
And its prevalence as well in the market. Like if you're going to be able to find a cane juice rum in your market, it's probably going to be a Martinique rum agricole. Mm-hmm. Maybe a Barbancourt, but that's kind of its own thing, Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so I think it's tough because rum agricole in some ways is not a beginner spirit, right? It is an acquired taste for a lot of people. However,
unless you grew up with it.
Or unless you're someone who's maybe coming from an agave spirits background or something like that. Right. It's an easier transition for people with that background of spirits enjoyment. So I do think it's like I can't really talk about Caribbean rum without being like, also, there's this cool style of cane juice rums, right?
I agree.
And I think there's 100% an argument to be like, well, that's not beginner level, right? But I think if you're someone who's really curious about spirits, I think you're just naturally going to be like, oh, it's also rum, but it's made from cane juice instead of malai. Like, I want to try that. That sounds cool and different. So
right.
I wanted to have one representative for this style in the bar. And I wanted to go with the unaged style because to me, that's the purest introduction to what cane juice rum is. Mm-hmm. I have great appreciation for a lot of aged cane juice rums. We just fucking released our own aged cane juice rum from Mauritius.
Yeah.
But if I'm going to introduce someone to what is cane juice rum, I'm doing a Blanc agricole and I'm doing Nissan Blanc.
Okay.
So that is my representative for Martinique rum agricole. Nissan Blanc 50% ABV. there's a lot of directions you can go in here. You can go Rum GM, you can do Clement, maybe a Con Bleu, something like that. You can go to Guadeloupe as well and do some amazing rums. You could do the Père Labat, BL. I mean, that's a little dicier on availability in the States, but
Right.
Nissan to me, it's one of the classic rum houses, rum agricole houses, and it's a beautiful spirit. So I do think there are going to be some beginners who try this, maybe even 50% or more, and are just like, what the hell is this? I don't think this is for me. But I also think some percentage of those, as they spend more time with it, will grow to love it. And there's going to be some people who love it right off the bat. So
Right.
this is it's a brutal exercise.
It is. It is. Well, that said, you're syncing up again with me because that was my next one also. Something about this, we are understanding the same things about what does a beginner bar look like and what should it have in it to expose people to these different styles. Even if we didn't say, hey, beginner, you're going to love all of these.
Yeah.
We're saying, hey, beginner, this is rum in so many ways. It's not going to be everything, but it's going to it's going to cover the bases, right? And so in order to cover the bases, I 100% agree with you that you need an agricole rum. It's like you said, I think Martinique, St. James unaged, Rum GM 100, and Père Labat 40 maybe are all good picks there. I like the Nissan as well. It's one of my very favorites. I don't know if that's as widely available as maybe some of the other ones I just mentioned, so I'll put those out there. My hope, like you said earlier, is, hey, if somebody happens to be listening to this as a beginner to rum and gravitates toward this episode, that they would get some of the bottles that we just mentioned to start trying this stuff. I fully and completely agree with your point that this is going to pull some people away, and they're like, oh, nope. I've done this with people live. I've had live, like beginner rum tastings, and I've included it because I felt like it would be a gross misstep on my part not to include it as part of rum. But the trade-off is some people just absolutely go, nope, not for me. Next. And that does hurt a little bit because it just doesn't really, in the wide world of rum, I think most people, especially in the United States, perception of rum, it doesn't fit that in any way. So they just reject it, most people. And it sucks because you want them to be open-minded into enough of it so that they can eventually, even if it's ultimately not for them, they can at least accept that it's like, oh, okay, I get it. This is how big rum is.
Yeah.
So I'm with you for all those reasons with it. And so far, I mean, we're 4 out of 5, right? We're not doing too bad
in terms of style, not specific rums. I mean,
correct.
I think you had some disagreements with my Dorley's 14 selection, so we don't have to run away from it. It's okay for us to disagree.
Yeah. I mean, we're not going to go back to that. All right. No, number 6 on my list.
Yeah.
So this is my number 2. I think you've only been through 5 of yours now, or 4.
I've been through
like
4.
Mm-hmm. Okay. But this would be number 6 because I've matched up with everyone, you plus Puerto Rico. This would be my number 6, which is, I kind of just, I color this as a multi-country blend / cocktail rum.
Okay.
And so shows how well rums that are blended from different countries can represent something different in terms of like we talk about this, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts in really well done blends, and that you can use these, either some of them are very, very sippable, or you can use them in a cocktail rum if it's not too expensive of a rum and really enjoy that. So I'm thinking of bottles along the lines of Denizens Merchant Reserve. I'm thinking 10 to 1, whether it's the unaged or the aged, even Black Tot's Finest Caribbean, right? I know that's a little bit more expensive than our price range we were talking about, but those type of things I think are there. They're well made, and in some cases you may not have them as a sipping rum, but you have them as a cocktail rum that you're going to really appreciate what they bring to the table. So that's kind of where I went with this one, and I think it's integral to a beginner rum bar.
So if you're going to recommend one of those rums you mentioned, which is the one?
Denizens.
Okay. I, too, considered the multi-country blend route. It's a very prevalent style of rum and can do some really cool things. Yeah. And obviously there's a history of it in the category in a way that I don't think a lot of other categories really, I just don't
Can
think it's
do.
that, I mean, it's not really
Yeah.
that common in other categories to do multi-country blends. So
Right.
ultimately for me, it just ended up on the cutting room floor because I just kept asking, like, is it essential for a beginner to have a dedicated bottle of a multi-country blend? You can make your own multi-country blend.
Hmm.
Yeah, we were just talking in the intro. You were talking about mixing the Guyana VSG, the Mauritius
Mm.
MLMO,
Mm.
into your own little multi-country blend. I think with the bottles that I've laid out in this beginner's rum bar, they could do a little experimenting of their own if they want to. Obviously, it's a really cool part of the category. I think Denizen's Merchant's Reserve is a great multi-country blend, really affordable, lots of uses for it.
Yeah.
It just ended up on the cutting room floor for me.
Yeah. And actually, you do bring a really good point there about like, hey, if you have all these other rums, you could create your own blend, but it would have to occur to the beginner to do that. Number one, and number two is you can really fuck it up pretty
Oh
easily.
yeah, you totally can. Yeah, I mean,
So
yeah, like I buy my own multi-country blends for the most part, but again, I think if I'm just getting into the category, it's to me it's not totally essential for the beginner.
yeah, I get where you're going. The word essential is the hang up, right? We
Mm-hmm.
didn't say you must create a beginner's essential rum bar, just to be clear.
Oh, we
We
said
just are saying,
complete.
yeah, complete.
Yeah,
Yeah, I did. And in order to be complete, I kind of do feel like I want this in there. But I get what your criticism is that it's kind of like that's on the border for you, is what I'm
yeah,
hearing. It's kind of, you chose to not go that far with it.
yeah.
And I can respect it. I can. But I feel pretty strongly that I would be confident that that would be a good ad.
So my next style of rum, I'm guessing that you have this in your bar.
Yeah, I mean, I've got 4 more bottles than you. But that said, I do think this is where it's going to start to go off the rails a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Because of the way
So
we approached it. Yeah.
so I tried for the most part to focus on rums that, I mean, Rumfire kind of goes against this, but for the most part, I was erring towards neat consumption. Even though I'll be more than happy to drink Rumfire neat, I don't think most beginners are maybe quite up to that yet. But the daiquiri is such an iconic piece of the rum world that I felt like I needed to have a daiquiri rum. And while many people will say that there are many daiquiri rums out there, I had the little Richard Nicholson sitting on my shoulder telling me exactly what a daiquiri rum needs to be in order to not be a rum sour rum.
Right, right. Because with the
And
other drinks you have, the other bottles, you could make a rum sour,
yeah, you
but
could
not a
make a great
daiquiri.
rum fire, rum sour.
Yeah.
Yeah, an Eldorado 12 rum sour. Yeah, exactly. But to do a classic daiquiri, and I'm not doing this just out of strict traditionalist adherence to the traditional definition of what a daiquiri is.
Yep.
Also, just because I think this rum style is so iconic and so thought of within, like, this is what
is.
a lot of people think of when they think of rum, is the clean, crisp,
Yes.
close to neutral almost white rum, right? So this is an aged and filtered rum that you would associate with simple cocktails like a daiquiri. And I had a hell of a time thinking of my representative for this category because I think the almost universal go-to in the rum enthusiast world for this is Havana Club 3.
Correct.
And
right.
we have a problem there in that
Yep.
obviously this is not available in the United States. And this is more of a personal problem for me, is just I kind of think Havana Club 3 has become overrated. A lot of people talk about it in the sense that it's just like head and shoulders above every other option in this style of rum. This clean, crisp, refreshing, offers some backbone, but really if it's in a daiquiri, like the lime and the hint of rum is kind of the star. So with that in mind, I had to rule out Havana Club 3, right?
Yeah.
And this is where I started to see the Puerto Rico opportunity, right?
Yes. I was going to mention that. I'm glad you did. Okay.
I'm not going to recommend Bacardi just because I don't want to. I just, there's some things they do with their rums that make me distrustful of them. And because of that, it is a brand I don't like to recommend to people.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not going to recommend it here. I have affinity for Don Q. Don Q Cristal is a completely serviceable rum for this. I do wish it just had like a hair more character to it, because I know they're
Me too.
capable of doing that, and it's
Yep.
like a couple degrees away from being vodka, basically.
Yep. Yep.
So I want to recommend that for getting Puerto Rico in there. But at the same time, I know when people come to me in my life, and like my mother-in-law was asking for a recommendation for a rum for a party she was having that could
Okay.
blend into these types of cocktails. And I recommended Real McCoy 3 because it's pretty widely available. I think it's really good. I've done blind taste tests of my own with like Real McCoy 3 versus Havana Club 3, and I
Mm-hmm.
preferred the Real McCoy 3.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really want to double up on Barbados rum.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I'm going to stick with the Don Q Cristal with reservations about it, but also just trying to get some, representation for Puerto Rico in there, and this style of rum that they've been a big part of pioneering over the years. So that's what I'm going to go with. But again, my feelings on it are very conflicted.
I mean, so I'm kind of glad you went with the Don Q Cristal in the sense that number one, it vindicates my earlier Puerto Rico,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I think we were thinking along the same lines there, although mine were aged Puerto Rico offerings. First of all, let me say, your Richard Nicholson little person up
I
there.
don't know if he's a devil or an angel on my shoulder. I'm not sure which one.
He's both, clearly. And I think, I could be wrong here, but I think he would say Real McCoy 3 does not make a daiquiri, it makes a rum sour.
I mean, maybe. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's got some pot still in the component in the blend, so yeah,
Yeah,
it might not
I'm
count.
I'm gonna wait for that email from him. But I think daiquiri police are gonna come to get you. But I feel like let me tell you, this was on my list of my 10. I had literally just a daiquiri rum.
Yeah.
Because I agree with you, everything you said. Categorically, we're in alignment for a lot of these. But I feel like you just missed an obvious choice here that I think is a really fun, good rum for this that meets all the criteria, which is Diplomatico's Planus.
I
And I
figured
think
that's what you're going to do.
Diplo's
Yeah.
Planus is everywhere. It's widely available. It's no additives. It's a really good product. And if I'm reaching for a beginner daiquiri rum, even non-beginner, I'll pour a daiquiri with Diplo Planus all the time. I like it a lot. But it to me is what it needs to do there. It brings the character, the backbone, like you said. I would prefer it to Don Q Crystal, personally.
Yeah, I
Um,
think I would too, to be honest. Part of it is a price consideration, and that
yes.
like I do think it's better. I don't know that it's worth paying that much more for me personally. So yeah, and also like feel free to push back on this, but it's almost like the Bacardi thing where I just have a sour taste in my mouth because of what they do to some of their other rums without disclosing it.
Not
That
an
it,
actual sour taste in your mouth with it.
yeah,
You're saying
yeah,
metaphorical.
yeah, a metaphorical sour taste in my mouth. That the lack of disclosure of sweetening of other rums, even though maybe that one isn't sweetened or isn't as sweetened, it just
Right.
it bugs me, and it does make me not want to recommend them as much.
There's two ways you can look at that, right? And I get your perspective on that, and you're not alone, right? I know a lot of people feel similarly in certain ways with that. But the other perspective that I would offer to that is use the dollar to buy the products that you believe in, right? And if you're doing that and you're buying the products that, in this case, the Planus, which is above board, right? And there's nothing that I'm worried about with anything they're doing in that rum that is not being told to me or anything like that. I feel confident saying, hey, I'm voting with my dollar for what I think you should be producing. And over time, there might be opportunities for them to say, you know what, people are liking this. We should look this way and drift in this way, as opposed to adding 40, whatever cubic liters of sugar into other rums that.
Cubic liters.
Yes.
I think that's the official measurement.
So like that's where my kind of brain can also look at it, and it's kind of the same with Bacardi. A bit of me feels quixotic. It's a little quixotic to like, feel like it's a fool's errand, but like, in the sense of like, I'm gonna make a difference by buying the rums from these companies that I like better because I feel like they're doing the right thing with these, and
Yeah,
thinking that's gonna make a difference. But I still nonetheless feel that way about it, I guess. So
yeah,
between your and my perspective, I think they're both kind of valid ways to see it.
sure,
Yeah.
sure. I agree.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
think that you should run through your remaining ones before
Yeah.
I do my final one.
Okay. So you have one left. I have three left.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do my last three here, and
Okay.
I'm gonna say there's a good chance that one of my three here is your remaining one.
Okay. I disagree,
No.
but,
Ooh,
but
okay.
I'm interested now.
All right. For all the reasons you said earlier, I felt uncomfortable leaving these origins out, even in a beginner bar. It was hard for me to cut these. If I had to, I could cut two of them. So,
Okay.
like I was saying earlier, I think I could get down to 8. It would be hard for me to choose, but I think I know which two I would choose to cut from this. So I'll start with the one I want to include
Okay.
for sure, and then the other two that were like didn't quite, were on the cusp.
All right.
The one I want to include is St. Lucia. I know it's maybe a little tougher to defend in certain ways for a beginner rum, and we have some things in the bar already that might be somewhat similar to your point earlier about like maybe there's cask driven parts of it, and some things might feel similar to maybe Barbados, but I really don't. I mean, I've gone back to St. Lucia rums often, and even the ones that you start with, whether that's kind of, the 1931 or the Chairman's Reserves or those bottles, they're still distinct to me in a way that I feel like highlights the diversity of rum, even for someone that is a beginner. And the value is there still. All of the kind of different kind of notes that you get in that, and we sometimes call it grunge or some other notes that are different enough. I feel like it's just an underrepresented rum category overall. And I know that there's a lot of bottles out there from the what we talked about, Chairman's Reserve, Admiral Rodney's, things like that. But it's for some reason, anytime I'm talking rum with somebody who is not a rum enthusiast, those never come up. I always have to point people to them.
Yeah.
So I think for my beginners, 10 bottles here or maybe 8 bottles, I would still want to put it as the 8th bottle. And I think I would go with Chairman's Reserve Legacy or even just Chairman's Reserve. I know. I see your face.
I think
but
you got to go with the legacy if you're going to include it.
it's better. I agree. But, for a beginner, I think Chairman's Reserve is not bad. You could do the Forgotten Casks as well. But I agree the Legacy is the bottle I'm going to recommend. I'm just saying, like, if you didn't have Legacy, it was sold out that day, you could still do a Chairman's Reserve other product, and you'd be good. So,
Well, yeah. I just I love St. Lucia Distillers. I love Chairman's Reserve rums. For me, Chairman's Reserve Original has always fallen a bit flat, and it's not one that I would really put out there enthusiastically for someone. But that might just be me.
I'm trying to consider it.
I just feel like it obscures a lot of what makes that distillery distinctive in a way that other rums like Legacy do not.
Given the choice, I would put that as the lowest ranking. So I'm with you there. Mm-hmm. But it would be Legacy and then Forgotten Casks and then Chairman's Reserve. I still think like if I had to have somebody that was the only one available, I'd want them to experience it. And if they liked it enough, they were like, oh, okay, I kind of get it. It's not my favorite of these 8 bottles, but I get that rum is different on St. Lucia. That's accomplishing the task.
I think St. Lucia crossed my mind. Ultimately, I had to cut it just because I was going to pick an aged rum. Probably Legacy would have been what I picked. Mm-hmm. And I do think it has a unique wrinkle in that it also has some cane juice distillate in it, mm-hmm. So that's kind of something that would make that stand out on the bar. I think it was tough for me because St. Lucia is a single distillery island, right?
Yeah.
Guyana is too. However, I think the prevalence of Guyana rum in so many contexts beyond just the output of the distillery,
Yeah, the
as well
volume is
as
greater overall.
as well as some of its historical importance and everything, just made it seem like this is something that a beginner, it's critical that they're introduced to this style of rum. Whereas St. Lucia, for me, again, you're completely right that they have produced super distinctive flavor profiles. I love the stuff that they do there, but just do I need it in my complete rum bar? I had to cut it.
I don't know, man. It feels incomplete without it. Let's see what you chose to put in its place.
No, you're gonna hate me, but yeah, I mean, keep going with yours.
Okay. My other two here that, like I said, would be on the fringe are Haiti. You mentioned it. So, Barbancourt, very prevalent. And you could even do a Saint Benevolence Claren or something like that, and I think that would be good. Some of those other Velier Clarens, they're going to be a little tougher, I think, for a beginner.
Yeah.
And it'll give you that same kind of rum fire thing that we talked about earlier. But I think there's a more approachable Claren in Saint Benevolence, and it's a good value. If you wanted to go there, you could do that, and you could see even amongst Haitian rum the differences that are there. And how distinct Barbancourt is from that. So Barbancourt 8 or Barbancourt 15. If you can get the Barbancourt 15 for a good price under that $60 kind of ish thing, great. If not, you go with the 8. The 8 is not my favorite. As we've talked about at length, I think you like it more than I do. So I'm going to choose the Barbancourt 15.
Okay. What's your last one?
My last one. This was the hardest one for me, I think. Because I was thinking there's so much to this island for rum, and it's another single distillery island. So all the things you said about St. Lucia kind of apply here.
Oh,
And yet,
I know where you're going.
You know who it is, yeah. And yet, there's just something I would feel remiss to not include in a complete beginner's bar, and that is Trinidad.
Yep.
Trinidad, just a historical base similar to Guyana. And not quite, but, it does have a long history with rum. And I feel like it would be hard to not have that represented in some way. And I looked to see, okay, maybe in the multi-country blend, you can have some of it that's a little bit that direction, but it was hard to find. And likewise, this was the other piece that it landed last kind of these for me is...
Well, what's the rum you're going to do?
Exactly. It's hard to
Yeah.
find a rum that is broadly available that we could really recommend from just Trinidad itself. Although I think there is one, and I don't think it's super widely available, but I've seen it in a lot of places, and that is Scarlet Ibis. It's decent.
Dude, that is not. Yeah, it's a fine rum, but it is not. Your rum bar, your beginner's rum bar, can be complete without the Scarlet Ibis.
Okay, then Angostura 7.
Okay. Yeah. I think you can be complete without that too.
I think it's a dry enough rum, because Angostura, they a lot of times will sweeten their rum offerings, and some of them are priced well above where I think a beginner's value bottle should be. So you're really kind of sticking with the Angostura 7, which, I mean, if you believe what they say, they've pulled all the sugar off of it. And I don't know, sometimes maybe I've been tasting a bottle that was a little older. I still feel like there's a little bit of sweetness behind it there that I wish kind of was not there. But maybe these newer bottles that they're doing are representative of no sugar added Angostura. Is it the Trinidad rum that I want to show people? No, not necessarily. But if I have to make a complete bar that includes a Trinidad rum that is widely available, where else are you going to go? And it's probably that.
I just think if you're having to be I don't really feel great about including this, then it just shouldn't be in there, is how I feel about it.
So I get that. Remember, my strategy coming into this was to say 10, you say 9, I say 8, and it's not included in 8, right?
Okay. So this is you're kind of including it, but not really.
I'm having my cake and eating it too right now by giving you all 10 of mine, right?
Yeah.
But if I had to leave the 2 off, I think I was going to choose the Haiti and the Trinidad just because I think that, like you've said, for the reasons you've said, I think I could get to a place where I would be okay with saying, hey, you still have a pretty complete beginner rum bar without them. But part of me still feels like, well, but if I add two more, it would be these. So there you go. Yeah.
Okay. Uh, a few things. I obviously thought about Haiti. I thought about Claren, which also made me think about the aguardientes of Mexico and the grogs
Yes.
of the world. And like,
Yeah.
do we want to get into these rum these rum-ish cane spirits, right?
Rumish
Well,
spirits.
the
Okay.
reason I described that, I'm not trying to be exclusionary, but things like Claren, things like Aguardiente, historically, the people making those didn't look at those and be like, oh, this is rum, right? This is more of like a modern categorization thing where these are being classified as rum in export markets, right? Because partially because that opens them up to wider market potentially, partially just because that's how certain countries define the spirit, but they're kind of their own thing at the same time, and so it I justified my not including them around that. Like I'm just gonna include things that like 100% consider themselves to be rum and don't define themselves separately in any way. So that's how I kind of edited those out.
Okay.
My last thing, I know you're not gonna like this, and I don't even know if I can properly defend it, but I did want to get an aged Jamaican rum into this bar
Okay.
because I think that aged Jamaican rums can be very distinctive from the other aged
Aged
rums
rums.
that I included. However, if I went Appleton 8 or something like that, I don't think it, like, obviously it's distinctive, but I wanted to open people up to more of what's there with Jamaica. And I actually think when you said Worthy Park Select, I think that's a great shout and one that I thought about. I was a little iffy on just like how available is it.
Yeah.
But I also, my final thing is also kind of in that category
Okay. Okay.
and kind of breaks some of the rules that we've established. But I wanted to pick something that was, this is the rum that takes the beginner from I'm a beginner to now I'm transitioning to intermediate, right? This is the one that opens their world a little bit, and I'll show it because I have the bottle right here. It's the
No fucking way.
it's the Papaline Jamaica High Ester. So this is a 5-year-old Jamaican rum, aged at origin, a blend of 3 different distilleries, different marks from Worthy Park, Long Pond, and Hampton. It is 57% ABV, which here's my thing. Here it is.
Okay.
One of the rums that I have recommended to beginners before, once I got a sense of the types of things that they like, is Smith and Cross,
Okay.
which is also 57% and is also like, there's some beginners that are like, oh fuck, like what is this? This is weird. I don't like it. It tastes like rotten fruit, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
But the people who are into it, and I have had beginners be like, this is the one. I love this. And it like completely turns them on to rum. The reason I didn't choose Smith and Cross for this is because I think this rum is phenomenal. And it's like 60 to mid $60, which I think is still a great value for what it is, but does break our rules a little bit. But John, what is the hobby of being a spirits enthusiast if you're not gonna every now and then be like, damn it, I spent way more money than I meant to on this bottle, right? So this is the splurge bottle. Every bar needs a splurge bottle, and so this is fulfilling that role for me, I think. And again, I could have gone some of the Worthy Park single estate bottlings. I could have gone some of Hampton's own bottlings. But I think on price, I think this beats a lot of those Hampton rums. And I think the Worthy Park Estate Reserve, while I love it, it's a little on the kind of tamer side. And I wanted something that was a little bit more of the funky side without going beyond the pale of funk. And so that's what landed me on this.
It's a stretch. So my complaints or my gripes, which you can see coming, are you're going to pick 6 bottles, but 2 of them are Jamaican.
Yeah.
I get that they're clearly different, right? And all of that. But I will credit your argument some, just to try to find the silver lining.
You're
here.
so charitable. You're so charitable. You really try to see all sides of the argument.
I do.
appreciate it.
I do, and I do credit the argument of like, hey, you are gonna win some people over, right? So, but I just feel like you also lose so many people in the process, and that's where it's tough for me to kind of join in with it. Again, we started this exercise pretty undefined for the most part, and that was intentional because I think we were trying to create and foment this discussion about what is this, what are we trying to get at, and see how we could take different routes to get there. So from that perspective, I think we've succeeded because I think we've taken a little bit of different routes to it. And I do credit, like I said, your argument that you are going to get some people that just go, whoa, this is amazing. But I think it still keeps the circle pretty small. And I'm trying to broaden that circle and let people get to intermediate or advanced levels by exploring these first.
I think for me, that's what the Dourlies, that's what the El Dorado is for in my bar, is bringing people into, again, trying to do this in as few bottles as possible. It's like I'm bringing people in with those, but there's a spectrum within beginner, right?
Yeah.
Like you start here and you keep going on the spectrum. You're still a beginner, but as you get towards the far end of the spectrum,
right,
you're more advanced within beginner, right?
Right.
And so I'm trying to string people along, and yes, this is probably a bit of a stretch. Rumfire might be in some ways as well, but I just think the rum world is so full of these fun surprises that as long as you have the ones that are an easier on-ramp in the bar, you should throw a few things in there that are going to blow people's mind a little bit, because the last thing I want people to think is that rum is boring. And so I think if you have too many of these down the middle aged rums, like if I'd thrown Appleton 8 in there instead, I'm trying to go a little bit sharper contrast between the rums.
I get where you're going and heading in that direction. I think you said it when you're saying, hey, I don't want somebody to come off with 6 rums or plus and feel like you understand rum because everything was similar, right?
Yeah.
Somehow. And you said boring. I don't know if I'd say boring, but just like, oh, I got it. All these different origins make rum, and they're slightly different.
Yeah.
And that would be a tragedy in and of itself to not have a person go beyond that. My bet would be, and I'm trying to get those people who understand, oh, okay, this is where I'm starting, but this is not where it ends. And that now I get to see, well, this bottle, and this bottle were kind of my favorites. What's next in that route?
Yeah.
And then go that way and continue to move in a direction that they can explore and get to those high ester rums or Rumfire or whatever it might be. In fact, this might be fun to do as an intermediate or advanced bar in a way of saying how many bottles do you need to really capture. It's going to be a lot harder to do that. But I think this was a fun way of kind of coming to something where I think we agreed on a lot. I would say 60 to 80%, and then you've got 2 perspectives to take. One is, do you try to go for gold? Like, hey, now try this, right?
Right.
Or do you play it a little bit more safe, but also broad?
Well, my hope is that if you are a beginner, you can listen to this episode and based on the things that we're saying about each rum and the push and pull between us, you can kind of suss out which ones are right for you in your spirits journey, right? Or maybe even if you're super advanced enthusiast and you're just thinking about what rums that you recommend to people, maybe this is some good food for thought. But I would love to hear if anyone at home wants to endeavor in this exercise and send us their own selection and how many rums they can do it in. If you think you can do it in 5 rums or 4 rums or 3 rums
There's no
instead,
way.
or if you think even doing it in 10 rums is insane and it should be more than that, send us an email, host@rumcast.com. That's HOST at rumcast.com. Or you can find us on social media. John, where can they find us?
at the Rumcast, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Threads. We are posting when we have events. There's some events coming up here in South Florida. I'm still a busy man, Will. I'm going to be here, there, and everywhere, and hopefully have 2 bottles of Rumcast Reserve, one each in my pockets wherever I go. Not really.
Shaking hands, kissing babies, pouring Rumcast Reserve.
I mean, it's a rum wonderland down here in South Florida, and we just want to be a part of it. So if you're in the area, and you're at one of these events, come say hi. We're going to be at, I will be at, I will say, the Miami Rum Renaissance Festival on November 8th and 9th. I'll be there on the 9th, this Sunday. And then there is a Rum Barbancourt event at the Kaona Room that I will be attending with the Rum Champion and some other people from Barbancourt there on the 13th. And then maybe, we'll see what we can put together in December as well.
Wow.
So,
hinting. Doing a little tease there at the end of the podcast.
Yeah, I don't want to say too much yet because it's just coming together. It's fresh off the press right now, but it looks like I'm going to be speaking about rum.
Wow. I don't even know about this.
It's someplace in Miami. So
I don't think I know about it.
In December. More details to come. So,
all right. Well, that wraps it up for this episode. But yeah, seriously, send us your thoughts on this subject. We would love to hear them. But until next time, cheers, everyone.
Cheers.